Hey, everyone, it's Isaya. Welcome. This is another episode of my podcast, and this is a special series that we begin today. It is called Exploring Relationship Red Flags. It's going to be a long series. Not all episodes are going to be in a row, but still it's a series. I believe it's going to be 9 episodes unless we change our minds, and this is Isaya's Inspiring Evening Podcasts. Series around the real shit relationship red flags that we should all be aware of. So we will be discussing the early warning signs of unhealthy relationship dynamics, the psychology behind red flag behaviors, and how we can interrupt those patterns before they escalate into harm. These conversations happen live and are then shared in my podcast and anywhere else. My guest feels like sharing, and my guest for this amazing series is the incredible Rie Pearson. Hi, Rie.
Hi, good morning.
So before we go deeper, I would like to read your bio so that people know a little more about you if they haven't met you before. So Rie Pearson lives overlooking the sea and describes herself as being on the edge. A police officer for 27 years with focus on policy and how the police deal with partner abuse, Rie specialises in domestic abuse, stalking and safeguarding. Her post-policing career has continued with directorships with several community interest companies, all focused in those specialisms. Rie's book, Be Kind, No Excuses, is a guide for teenagers and parents to raise awareness on the red flag behaviors that are a precursor to abusive behaviors in relationships. Her mission is to flip the discussion on violence against women and girls and talk about the real problem, the majority of abuse being perpetrated by men who are violent towards others, women, men, and children. Be Kind, No Excuses is now a community interest company. And Rie is also the co-creator of the WOW, Women Only Wellness Ltd, and WOW Gathering, which aims to create safe spaces for women and girls to come together and step into their own power through learning that self-care is not selfish. Big topics, right?
Yeah,
big topics. So
very much in the news at the minute.
Yeah, exactly. And it's good for them to be on the news. It's better for us to start feeling aware and start acting against, because reading the news and just feeling depressed about it is not going to help. So I think that this conversation is powerful. I think this conversation is necessary. It's about awareness, accountability, and recognizing those warning signs before they become wounds. In this first episode of the series, we will not really get into the red flag behaviors, although we might slip, but we want to face some uncomfortable truth, that is that abusive relationships don't exist. There, I've said it. They don't exist, right? When you said that the first time to me, I was like, sorry, what? So can you elaborate, please? What do you mean?
Yeah. Well, because a relationship is a construct. It isn't a thing. What we have is relationships with abusive people. And by saying abusive relationships, you're actually taking away from the problem. Again, the problem is, and in the majority of cases, it's abuse perpetrated by men on women. Now, I know that there are women who perpetrate abuse. There are more than 2 genders, and there are people who perpetrate abuse. But the real issue and the thing that is causing us the most problems and the thing that is causing the most violence and murders, homicides, is men who perpetrate abuse. Men who perpetrate abuse in relationships, men who perpetrate abuse in the street. And that is a problem. Now, I'm based in the UK, I'm based in England, and the government currently are saying they are going to reduce violence against women and girls by 50% in this tenure of government. And by saying that, what they have done is they've actually taking away what is actually the problem. The problem is males who perpetrate abuse. Now they need to focus on males who perpetrate abuse rather than violence against women and girls. Because as you say, men who perpetrate abuse against men and women and children. And they are the problem. At the minute, the strap line is completely missing the point. So relationships are as construct. If you find yourself in a relationship with somebody who is abusing you, then you need to be coming to talk to us. You need to learn about what that looks like at the beginning. It's not the relationship that's the problem. It's the perpetrator of abuse in the relationship who is the problem.
So we're kind of going towards there is no way. Sorry, I'm going to play dummy here, but there is no way that I can be with an abusive person in a non-abusive relationship. Right? So
it's the person who's the problem.
I cannot fix a relationship that is abusive by staying with the same person.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we can talk about that down the line about and maybe we should put this in another episode about how people can change their behaviors and learn. But there's got to be an intervention there, and that's maybe the conversation for another day. We could put that in.
Yeah, but I think that what you're saying is that if I enter a relationship with somebody who is a potential abuser, let's put it this way, there's no way that the relationship is not going to be abusive.
Absolutely, yeah, because their purpose is to do that, isn't it? Their purpose is to, and I think a lot of it is around entitlement and belief that they can do what they want to do when they want to do it, and that is closely linked to the patriarchal structures that we have on planet patriarchy at the moment.
And I think that that's why it's so important to look at the red flags, because if the situation is already as a bud, it's already there. Well, I might as well get out of there as fast as I can, as fast as I realize that there is no way out.
And that is why we talk to parents, because we want to talk to teenagers, and we want parents to know what the signs are to look for as well, because it starts at the beginning. I mean, you don't get into a relationship that becomes abusive. You get into a relationship with somebody who's going to abuse you. And by seeing the early signs, learning the early signs, you then have that ability to then say, well, actually, this is not for me. Because once you are, if you don't know those signs and you get into a relationship, one of the things, certainly for girls and women, is a very early pregnancy, quite quickly after that relationship started. Now, if you get into that where you're then in a relationship with an abusive person and you have a child with that abusive person, you are in a relationship of sorts for the duration of forever with that child, because that's how the system works. The system gives that person parental authority over that child, depending on which country you're in. And that's one of the
authority signs. I mean, you then end up, if I put myself in that situation, I then end up with having a child with somebody who was an abuser. And that is, difficult enough to deal with.
Yeah. So I mean, I did the same. So if you're looking at your work, if you're watching this and you're a parent of a teenage girl, one of the things I say is make sure her ovaries are like Fort Knox, because you need to make sure that she doesn't get pregnant. And I know some of the dads are a little bit, because I've had to change my language. I've had to say romantic relationships, because domestic abuse is intimate partner relationships by definition. So I say romantic relationship because it makes it a little bit easier for daddies to say, oh, my daughter's got a boyfriend. But the fact is, get over yourself and make sure your daughter's protected. But equally, make sure your son is protected, because you don't want him in a relationship with somebody who could be abusive towards him by getting pregnant deliberately. So you need to protect your sons and make sure they're using condoms.
Yeah, I've had this conversation with my sons very many times when they were teenagers and post-teenagers. Now, maybe we should, go a little back and start with what the hell is abuse? What is an abusive person? How do I, what does the law characterize as abuse? Because I think that there is a very a big misconception, like abuse would be when somebody hits you. And I think that this is very, very short-sighted.
Well, it's a physical violence. Physical abuse is a very small part of domestic abuse. Domestic abuse includes emotional abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, and financial abuse. Now, financial abuse in relationships with people who are adults is, in my experience, 100% of the women that I work with who've survived a relationship with an abusive man are subjected to financial abuse, both in the relationship and post-separation.
Mm-hmm.
So financial abuse is huge, not so much when you're a teenager, but the signs are there early on. People's attitudes about work, people's attitudes about who should pay for what. When you go on a date, you have to be aware of them. And I'm not saying that every teenage boy is potentially abusive. What I'm saying is be aware that some behaviors, some attitudes are abusive. And if that boy does something, and I'm just going to use an example. Can I use an example?
Yeah, of course.
A boy cracks a joke at your expense and it hurts your feelings. And you say, that's hurt my feelings. And he says, oh, I'm really sorry. In my family, our sense of humor is we take the piss out of each other. That's my normal, or words to that effect. And he's really sorry for that. And you say, well, that I understand that, but that's not my sense of humor and hurt my feelings. And he says, I'm sorry, I will never do that again. Green flag. If he says, well, I've hurt your feelings. Oh, it was just a joke. Get over yourself. You've got no sense of humor. Even though he now knows because you've told him that your feelings are hurt and he's telling you to get over it and you are the problem. Red flag.
Mm-hmm.
That's simple.
Yeah, that tiny.
And that's why it's hard, because it's tiny.
Mm-hmm.
And then because girls are brought up to people please at this time on this planet, and it's really difficult for a 13, 14, 15-year-old girl to say, actually, I'm unhappy about that, because she's programmed to people please and to keep the peace, which is another conversation we need to have. But that's her normal
go-to method
to go with it and not put herself first. Whereas what I want to do, I'm basically teaching 14-year-olds how to tell people that, oh. But nicely, do you know what I mean? It's like, so you're going to be quite a strong 14, 15-year-old if you turn around and say, actually, no, I'm putting myself first. Because like we said earlier, the Women Only One, this is all about self-care. It's about women being reprogrammed to put their self-care first, which the airlines have been telling us to do since aeroplanes were invented.
Yeah. Of course. And I think that we, up to an extent, we as women, we're ready to do that for our kids. To put, but not for ourselves.
Yeah. Well, you find that in long-term relationships, the woman will put up with and suffer the abuse, and then the children get to a certain age and daddy starts on them. And that for a lot of women is the trigger for them to start planning their exit.
But it's really important, I think, that we understand that abuse starts with ignoring your feelings, basically, with somebody telling you, no, I don't care about your feelings. I don't care if you were hurt by my joke. And it's not when, when the hand is lifted to hit your face, that's the end of the road. And that's why we're going to be trying to discuss that in an incremental way. Let's put it this way. I don't like the term, but now the thing that you said earlier on, and I'm going to go back to it, is who can be an abuser? Is it, do we agree that, and I'm asking you as a former policewoman, you have the statistics also, because you've been working in this field for so long, and you have so many numbers. When you crunch the numbers, and please repeat that, who are the abusers?
But if you're looking at my previous career, where I was dealing with the police respond to 999 calls in the UK, so that's the emergency services. When I was in the police, 1 in every 10 calls to the police were domestic abuse related. Now, nobody rings the emergency services for nothing. And it's actually a moment of anxiety when people are ringing 999. I don't know if you've ever had to do it, but I've had to ring 999 a couple of times, and even I was nervous, and I was a police officer, because it's a moment of stress and trauma, isn't it, when you're doing it? And so now, from now 10 years gone, they're now saying that the police receive a call of domestic abuse, 2 in 5 calls, so that's 4 in 10 calls.
So
because
we're talking about a huge increasing,
huge increase. But also, people in the last 10 years have got more access to a telephone, because everybody's got a phone in their pocket. So it doesn't mean that domestic abuse has increased, although we do know that it has increased, but we do know that more is being reported.
So it's both,
because
it's
because that abuse was always there. It just people maybe didn't have access. So if you go back 50 years, and not every home had a telephone, and you would have to run out to the public telephone box if you needed to phone anybody. So there was that kind of, there was always abuse there. It just wasn't reported, and now it's getting reported more. People are more aware, but
that's also what I was going to say. We have a phone in our pocket, but also there's, I feel, more education around domestic abuse, around, because we all have a phone in our pockets. We can look in the internet.
Yeah, we can. Last year, an organisation called Thriving Alone, a community interest company that I work with, who works with women post-separation, we put a paper out asking people, the first question on the paper was, have you been subjected to domestic abuse? And the second question was, have you been subjected to any of the following: sexual abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse, financial abuse? Now, 70% of the respondents said they had never been subjected to domestic abuse, and question mark, no. But of that 70%, 100% of the 70% said they had been subjected to emotional abuse, psychological abuse, sexual abuse, or financial abuse. So when we're saying to people, have you been subjected to domestic abuse, the default is, I've never been hit, and therefore I have not been a victim of domestic abuse.
Which is,
but 100% of bullshit. The 70% had been subjected exactly to the other sides of domestic abuse that people are now learning about. Now, having previously been a police officer, my response was always the physical abuse, the punching, the kicking, the whatever. I was never. We did have domestic homicides while I was in service, but never on my shout, you know what I mean? But we did have rape. But people think physical violence, and therefore I'm a victim
of domestic abuse. So
but
I'm good. I'm good because he never hit me.
And that's it. And then there's a whole conversation that we're going to have about people who say, well, at least he did not hit you. So that's another episode to talk about. So you have the other side of the spectrum, which is at the beginning of a relationship, or even throughout. I mean, I've got to give a talk in a couple of weeks' time at the WI, the Women's Institute, and there will be ladies in that room who will be in and have been in relationships with an abusive man for decades, and they are going to have a light bulb moment when they're sitting in that room, and I am absolutely dreading it, because then I have to deal with that. And we do put things in place to help people, but every time I give a talk, there are people in that room who go, oh shit.
Fuck, that's me.
When I opened the Facebook group, I've got a private Facebook group. In the first year, we had 7 divorces. And I had to support women through those divorces. And they've just gone up because we're raising the awareness. But my job, if you like, is to raise awareness at the beginning so people don't become victims in the first place, which is like true prevention rather than protection. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah,
so
no, I think there's a huge need for both.
Oh, absolutely.
But,
Yeah.
But the idea that we can limit our job to protection is very short-sighted again, because
sure, absolutely.
Because when you say the numbers, I agree that there's more awareness. I agree that we have more access to calling 999, but still, there's an increase. It's not going down. So prevention is crucial.
There's an organisation in the UK called the Youth Foundation, and they did some research I published last year, July 2025. And that they ask, it was a really good piece of research, because, the questions we asked were, have you been a victim of domestic abuse? Have you been a victim of da, 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 da? The Youth Foundation had lots of in-depth questions around coercive control, and it was all aimed at teenagers. So it was like 13 to 19-year-olds. And in that cohort of 10,000 teenagers, 20% of them had already been in at least one relationship with an abusive person. Some of them had been in multiple
13 to 17-year-olds.
13 to 19-year-olds. There were 10,000 people took part. So 20% of those children had already been abused, which is outrageous.
Yeah, enormous.
And that's why we need to talk to parents and say, look, what's going on here? Look what's happening. And there's a whole conversation about what boys see online, what boys see in pornography, what boys think is a sexual relationship, what intimacy means. And that's another episode that we can talk about.
So many things.
But the things at the beginning, and which you alluded to earlier, is about your feelings. And we're taught to ignore our gut feeling. Now, we have 3 brains. We have this brain in here, we have our heart, which gives us the emotion, and we have our gut, which gives us emotion. So we've got 3 things going on. And we are programmed, because we're programmed to be people pleasers as women, we are taught to ignore our gut feeling. Now, if you look at my book is 5 stories that were donated by survivors of relationships with abusive men. And I asked them to write their story from the moment they met their perpetrator.
Yeah.
And in one case, lady number 1, Portia, 30 minutes. There's a red flag in 30 minutes of her meeting a complete stranger.
Wow.
And in the others, it's not much after that. Because those red flags, like people say, I didn't realize this, and then this happened. And I'll say, let's go back a bit. Let's go back, when you first met this person, let's talk about that. And there are always red flags. Always.
Yeah, well, obviously, because,
we don't know, because people don't know what they are. They don't see them because they do not know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
And that's what we teach people. These are the things to look for that present as caring, but actually they're the start of controlling.
Yeah, because one of my questions earlier on was, what is abuse? and you can, determine that there are 5 types of abuse, as you said, etc. We can also say it starts with abuse is deciding that the other person does not exist in a relationship, that what I want, my needs and my desires are the main ones, and that you don't exist, and that's abuse. So control. So the if we sum it up, basically, it's any sign of the other person wants to control me, I should be, turning my back and saying bye now.
Well, saying that, I know it's really difficult to just go absolutely no, but I am 60 years old, and if I knew what I know now when I was 15, I would have just run away from that person.
Yeah, of course.
And that person, and that person as well.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I mean, I'm, ever since meeting you and even before, I've kind of examined my own relationships. Obviously, it's like, let me have a look. And I'm happy to report that the one I'm in now is okay, not perfect, but okay. But I've seen, now that I looked at signs, mostly as in my relationships when I was a teenager or a young adult, it was like, why, thank the goddess I was like clever enough, or I moved. Some of the relationships were broken through literally not my fault. I had to go to the university or whatever. But I think that saved my life several times. Not my own awareness at all. My own awareness was in the complete zero. Because I was, when you say people please, for me, it was more than that. It was I wanted and I needed to be loved at any price, at any freaking price. And the price was very, very expensive. I consider myself lucky that I did not end up in one of those relationships. Not that I'm ending anything right now, but I'm going to be 60 in a couple of years, and same. It's like, oh, okay.
And I mean, a lot of us will reflect on that. A lot of adult women will reflect on that, and we need to go, actually, let's analyze that, and let's see, and let's gift that forward.
And as a parent, that's what I was going to say. That as a parent, or even as a wise woman, talk to younger people. But at least as a parent, it's like, oh, I really, I only have boys, and I'm really happy, because I think I would not have been able, when they were teenagers, to be that person that taught the red flags and the, I did the compliment thing very much with my boys obsessively, because I have no intention of becoming a grandmother ever, mostly when they were teenagers. But I don't think I could have been in that position of really helping my girls being aware. I think it takes so much time for my generation. It did take too much time to realize for ourselves. And so it's really important that hopefully the younger generations learn faster, and then they can teach the even younger generations.
A lot to be said about honest conversations. And my generation, I come from a Roman Catholic family. Those conversations just weren't had. We didn't talk about this kind of thing. This kind of thing was called this kind of thing. Do you know what I mean? And I think I appreciate the struggle that parents have. And I have many times been speaking at an event when I said to parents, put your hands up who feels uncomfortable talking to their teenagers about intimate relationships. And 90% of the room will raise their hand. And I will say, well, just get over yourself, because your job is to be a parent and to safeguard your children, not to judge them on things that they've done, where they end up in difficult situations. So the book really is a bridge. It's a bridge to help those conversations start, if you're not the kind of parent like me who talks about absolutely every bloody thing, because I see that I want my kids to be safe.
Yeah, and I think it's for me, it was a decision very early on with my kids to talk about everything. Because why not? Basically, why not? My
mean,
question was,
sometimes
why
I
not?
mean, my kids are adults now, and we'll be having a conversation, and I'll come out with something, and like, oh, mother, and I'll be
Yeah,
like,
of
it has
course.
to be said. It has to be said. So I'm a lot more open because I came from out of the box.
Mm. And
I
I think
fought
that
my way out of
it's
the box.
also partly, I think that maybe some parents who have difficulty talking about those kind of subjects, and you can't see the air quotes if you're listening on an audio, but I did
Yeah.
them, is also because there's shame involved around their own relationship or ships with other people.
Yeah.
And it's like,
Yeah.
I don't want my kids to judge me. But this
Yeah.
is not
But if
your job as a parent.
not your job. Your job is not to be judged or to judge. That is the point. I mean, you need to have those conversations, and we actually make fun of it because they'll say, God, you always just say it, don't you? And I'm like, well, no filter. Because no filter protects people. I mean, do it in an age appropriate way.
Of course, of course.
But but if you read the book, you'll be able to do it in an age appropriate way because the book's written for 14-year-old girls. That's essentially when I was writing it in my head as the words were coming out. It's like I need to target this at 14-year-old girls who are starting to start dating people. So it's not hard, it's not difficult to read as an adult. It's very basic, 14-year-old. I'm not saying 14-year-olds are stupid,
Yeah, and
but
if
it's
we
not.
don't want to have rooms full of 60-year-olds who suddenly realize, fuck, my life has been a complete shit, lie,
Yeah,
abusive thing,
but also
we
one of the
we
things
need to
that
start
nobody talks
earlier.
one of the things that nobody talks about is how very young girls and women have babies very young. They don't have babies with 16-year-old girls don't have babies with 16-year-old boys because when you've got a 22-year-old man who's giving you lots of attention or a 25-year-old man who's giving you lots of attention, who's 16, you're not even looking at the lads in your classroom. But nobody's having that conversation about the age of baby daddies and how, it might be legal in England to have sex when you're 16, but it's not all right if you're having sex with somebody who's 30 or 25. That's because they can manipulate
It's
you
legal,
young.
but it's not.
It's legal, but it's not okay. I mean, I work with an organization where it's young mums, and we're talking about 18-year-old girls. I mean, I'm calling them girls and women, but it's 18-year-old women who have children who've started school already.
Yeah.
Holy shit.
Yeah.
And
I
that's
remember
because
I have a few years back, like a good 20 years now, a friend of mine was teaching, a French friend of mine was teaching in the US for a year. And in her school, so it was I don't know, a teenage school, I don't know, middle school, after middle school? What comes after middle school?
High school.
Yeah. I think it was both middle and high school, some kind of American weird system anyway.
Yeah, we have that. We have a theatre system here.
In her school, she was not allowed, as a French teacher, she was teaching them French, to show them a French movie where teenagers kiss. Tongue kiss, like the big thing. Ooh. There was, in that same school, a nursery.
Yeah.
For mothers, for teenage mothers to leave their children while they went to school. And I'm like, maybe education here, because you wouldn't need a nursery if you showed them, the movies where people kiss, and then what happens when people have sex.
The Catholic school that I went to, the science textbook had the bit on contraception removed.
Yeah, of course.
The page was torn out. Somebody on the staff must have gone through hundreds of textbooks and the page. What?
This is crazy because, again, we end up with, is there an easier way for a man to have control over a woman or a teenage girl than to make her a mother? No, there isn't. This is so easy. It's like so easy.
Fortunately for me, I was a teenager at the time where HIV and AIDS was splashed all over.
Me too.
And it was wear a condom. And I have always been a safety girl, and I was Otherwise, undoubtedly, I would have had a baby.
Yeah.
Very, very young. But I was, no, you have to use a condom.
You and so many others.
Get...
I think we were such a, you know, they put the fear of the disease into us.
Yeah.
But the fear of the disease, not of the baby, you know. And I'm like, you know, the baby was not worse, because obviously at that time people were dying of HIV.
My mother always used to say, well, a baby's always welcome. I'm like, what?
No, no, sorry, no. Anyway, so yeah, so we have this picture of how this creates itself, how the opportunities for abusers to hit on girls is made easy, even by society, by their parents being feeling self-conscious about talking about these topics before. So yeah, indeed, writing a book and making that book targeted at a 14-year-old. And I know that you're trying to get this book into as many high schools as possible and libraries, and, you know, make it
anywhere, because it's not rude. It's very straightforward. It's about showing the red flags, using examples from survivors. And of the 5 stories, 4 of them were teenagers when they met.
Yeah, and this it floors me every time. You know, the numbers that you say, it's like, what, are we serious? I mean, this is 2025. We just can't be.
There's a statistic on the front of my book from the United Nations Drug and Crime Unit, and it says in 2017, across the planet, there were 30,000 and more women murdered by a partner, ex-partner, or family member. Now, bearing in mind that statistics only tell you the bare minimum, so not everything will have been, not every murder will have been categorized correctly. So at least 30,000 women. Now, the United Nations released an updated statistic this year from 2024, and that's gone from 30,000 murders to 50,000 murders. So even with all the awareness in the world, murders are increasing by nearly double. That's 1.7% increase.
Yeah, that's enormous. I mean, it's almost enormous. A double situation. And it's like, no, we need to be talking about these topics more.
And because these relationships happen very quickly as well. I mean, I know there was a case here recently where the lady had literally known the guy 5 months. So it's not necessarily long-term relationships, but it's also very short-term relationships.
Yeah. Of course. And again, you know, you don't need to be murdered to have been abused.
No.
So not only the murders, but even the rest of them. And also, I wanted to ask you if you think that there is also a thing that we should push is, you were talking honest conversations with parents or with kids, friends. So is that valid to say that, you know, basically talking about our relationships with our peers can also be some kind of, you know, help?
One of the strategies that abusers use is to isolate you from your peer group. So one of the things, because I've got the ABC course for girls, which is self-awareness, self-belief, self-confidence, and one of the sections in there is about who are you hanging out with, because you are most like the 5 people that you hang around with the most, aren't you? And it's about, are you a good friend, or are they a good friend to you? A lot of it, because we're programmed to that, oh well, keep the peace, and oh, he's not such a bad guy, this, that, and the other. But you need to surround yourself with people who are supportive of you. I mean, this is the Women Only Wellness Gathering. It's about supporting women and bringing women up and helping self-care. But making sure you have those conversations, but also making sure when somebody discloses something to you, because they've chosen you to tell you something that's really troubling them, that's really hard for them and painful for them, your reaction to that disclosure is really important. So being a good friend and having the ability to listen without criticism, without thinking about how you're going to respond, just listen first. really important. And that will help those conversations. We see now, and you're with this, Isaiah, the amount of women's circles that are popping up. We are creating more and more and more women's circles. And what really was brilliant for me last year's Women Only Wellness Gathering was how you can literally walk around that field, and every single workshop, women sit in circles. We don't even think about it. We sit in circles. We do not do the hierarchy. We do not do a pyramid scheme. We sit collectively in circles. That's what we do. And that's where you need to be as a woman. You need to be there. And male allies need to be there too.
Of course. But for me, the thing is, it goes both ways. So because it's sometimes, because when you're a victim of abuse, that's what it does. It erases your self-confidence. So you stop trusting your gut and your emotions. So talking about that with peers, aka other females, and being okay to be vulnerable, and to have somebody that is an avid listener and not judger say, yeah, you're right, there's something wrong, because sometimes we need the reassurance as well. So it goes for, I think open conversations would solve a lot of things in the world.
Absolutely, it would, because then if everything was out in the open and there was no shame, shame dies when you shine a light on it.
Yeah, I agree. And so we've kind of gone a little bit around this idea that it's not about abusive relationships, it's about people who are abusers, and how we can shine lights on that in any way, shape, or form, and that is always a good idea. Yeah. So I think that rounds up the first episode. You mentioned at the end that the Women Only Wellness Gathering. So let me just do some promo here. So every year in June, in Northallerton, UK, is that Yorkshire or
North Yorkshire? Yeah.
No, North Yorkshire. There is a gathering called WOW, which is amazing. I've been there. Please come. It's women and girls only, and it's an amazing space to sit in circle with other women, to learn things, to share, to discuss, to talk, to listen, and to sing and do hula hooping and do art and eat good food. And basically, it's amazing. And it is a fundraiser. It supports 2 charities, one of them being the one that you run called Be Kind, No Excuses CIC, which is, do you say CIC or SIC or whatever?
Yeah,
CIC. Which is about preventing or helping to prevent abuse in any way, shape, or form, and informing and having those honest conversations, and sharing this amazing book that you co-wrote with 5 incredible women who survived this. So yeah, you will find links if you want to buy a ticket to come and play with us on that field. You will find links around this video or audio. Together with that, you will also find links to Rie's every other social media and website, so you can get in touch with her if you want her to come and teach at your event, or if you need some copies of that book sent to your library, high school, or wherever. I think wherever is a good place, isn't it?
Wherever is a good place.
Yeah. wherever teenage girls, and even and we'll come back to that in the future episodes. But I believe that there is. I agree that there is an importance to teenage girls, but I think that it's still also young women and older women, and everybody needs to be aware, basically. Thank you so much, Rie. Do you have anything to add on this one, or otherwise?
Thank you for listening. You know, Isaiah, I could talk about this for hours. I can talk about this underwater. So yeah, throw me a line.
Okay, so we'll talk about this more. We have at least another 8 episodes programmed. Bye for now, everyone.